one key rule that I've come to focus on over the years is to see whether a country is growing in a balanced way or not, and how vibrant is the economy. Now, what do I mean by that? It is this, that if a country is really growing in a balanced way and is growing rapidly, then a lot of new cities will emerge in that country. And that's been the case with China. In China's case, the number of new cities which have come up in the last few years has been quite staggering. In fact, I think in the last 3 decades, nearly 20 new cities have come up in China. And I define these new cities as places which used to have a population of less than 250,000 but now have a population of more than 1 million. Now take the case of India. In India's case, hardly any new cities have come up. In fact, when we did this study, we only came up with 2 cities which have gone from having a population of less than 250,000 to more than 1 million in the last 2 or 3 decades. And those 2 new cities were in Kerala, both of them coming up because of the redrawing of the administrative map. So not because there was some new growth which took place there, but really because of the way that you calculate population in those places changed. Now this tells you a lot about why China has done so much better than India. It tells you about the fact that when you have new cities coming up, it means that you have new sources of growth which come up, new manufacturing enterprises that come up in those places. So in China's case, you have cities like Shenzhen, Dongguan, which have really exploded in the last few years, not just the fact that people have moved to Beijing or Shanghai. In India's case though, a lot of the migration that takes place from rural to urban areas tends to happen towards just the 5 mega cities. As a result, today in India, 17% of India's urban population lives in the 5 mega cities of Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai and Bangalore. On the other hand, in China's case, not only does China have many more mega cities defined as cities with a population of more than 10 million, but just 12% of China's urban population lives in mega cities, because China has had so many new cities that have come up out there. So this is what really is a problem in India, which is that because of the poor manufacturing, lack of SEZs doing that well in India, and the fact that so much focus is paid to these big mega cities, a lot of the people move to the mega cities in India, and that leads to all sorts of problems in the way the mega cities are run and how we interface with the mega cities. In China's case, not that the mega cities don't have any problems, but growth is much more spread out with the rise of these second-tier cities. Now, there's one more way that I've looked at this rule, that if you look at countries with a population which is smaller, let's say of less than 100 million, what I typically find is that the ratio between the largest city in that country and the second largest city in population terms tends to be about 3:1, which is that the population of the largest city of that country tends to be 3 times, or not 3 times, but definitely not much greater than 3 times than the population of the next largest city. And that tells you that growth is quite balanced in that country. And when the population ratio is more than 3:1, it tells you there's a problem with that country. The classic case is Thailand. In Thailand's case, Bangkok's population is 10 times larger than the population of the second largest city in Thailand. And that is why in Thailand you have so much social pressure and tension and so much resentment in the countryside against Bangkok's elite, because this feeling is there that Bangkok really plays an overarching role in the country's development. Now, that same rule can be applied to Indian states, and here also we find something fascinating. India really is the size of many countries put together. So if you look at Indian states, what we find is that the ratio of the population in many states in India between the largest city and the second largest city tends to be within this global rule that I've developed of 3:1. But which are the states where this ratio is out of whack? A couple of surprises here. One is Bangalore. In Bangalore's case, you find that the population of Bangalore is nearly 10 times larger than the second largest city in Karnataka, which is Mysore. And the other is a bit more obvious, which is West Bengal. In West Bengal's case, the population of Kolkata is 10 times greater than the second largest city in West Bengal. So it tells you that these states are not doing enough to create balanced growth. In the case of Karnataka, it is too concentrated in one city. And in the case of West Bengal, because the state has done so poorly in the last 30 years or so, that there's too much concentration in just one city, Kolkata, which is a very old city, and not enough new cities have come up in Kolkata, or at least not enough growth has taken place in the second tier cities of West Bengal. And that's hopefully which something will change, given the fact that the state is doing much better in the last couple of years in terms of the growth rate. So that I find is a very key rule to look at a global level and also at an Indian level, that the ratio of population between the largest city and the second largest city in states or in countries in the world with a population of 100 million or less should typically not be more than 3-1. And when it is more than 3-1, it is a sign of unbalanced growth. And in the case of much bigger countries like China and India, when you look at it at an aggregate level, one thing we find that India has been really deficient on compared to China is in the creation of new cities, whereas China has a very impressive track record in creating new cities.